All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock and we're going to go ahead and start tonight's community meeting. Again, just apologies that we did need to shift this to a virtual format. I hope everybody understands that with the rapid increase in COVID numbers, we felt it was prudent to move to an online forum. We know it's not accessible to everybody, particularly in the Honomu area, which does have pretty spotty internet. We are recording this and streaming it on Facebook Live, where it will be available afterwards. And it will also be available on the District 1 YouTube channel in a day or two. Just by way of introduction, my name is Heather Kimball. I'm the County Council Member for District 1, which includes Honomu. It starts at the Wailuku River and goes all the way up to Waipio Valley and includes a small portion of Waimea as well. Tonight we have with us members of the community policing group. We have members of the prosecutor's office from the county, and we have Glenn Sacco from R&D. So to start, I will pass the mic over to Officer Albus to introduce himself. Just as a courtesy, if folks wouldn't mind muting themselves while we have our speakers talking, and then when we get to Q&A, we'll go through that process when we get there. So Officer Albus, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? I think we have both of you on here, don't we?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
My name is Officer, I'm Darren Abalos, part of community policing. I've been tasked, as well as me and my brother, to kind of spearhead the agricultural theft that's been happening out in the Hamakua area. So we've been kind of working closely with the prosecutor's office and other agencies to try and, I guess, crack down on all the thefts that have been happening. And we've been making some good progress, but of course it's still apparent. So if there's any questions, concerns, anything that we can help you guys with, then let us know.
Thank you. All right, moving on, Office of the Prosecutor, could you folks introduce yourselves and let us know who's present from your office tonight?
Aloha, Heather. Mahalo for having us today. Hawaii County Prosecuting Attorney Kelvin Walgen. Present with me this afternoon are Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Jefferson Malate, who's handling agriculture thefts in both East and West Hawaii. We have with us one of our investigators, Shane Muramaru. Many of you in the agriculture community are familiar with Shane. He's been very instrumental in working with agricultural theft over the years with our office. And we also have Special Projects Coordinator Alan Bartolome over there toward my far right. Mahalo for having us today. As Darren mentioned earlier, we have been working with community policing, trying to tackle this problem from all different angles. We do have our investigators unit that Shane is a part of. They've also been trying to take a proactive approach, providing education in the community, educating our vendors, as well as assisting police by conducting compliance checks at different farmers markets, as well as other produce around the island. So just again, mahalo again for having us this afternoon, and looking forward to working with you all.
Thank you so much for all of you for being here tonight. And finally, I'll pass it over to Glenn Sacco from R&D.
I thank you, Heather. I'm Glenn Sacco. I'm with the Department of Research and Development, and I'm the Economic Development Specialist working with the agricultural industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. So the reason we're meeting tonight was we had a constituent, Jack, who is here on the call, reach out to us with concerns about ag theft, particularly in the Honomu community, and we thought it would be best to get everybody together to have a discussion. Jack, I see you're on the line. Would you like to say anything before we just begin with Q&A?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. So so there's a couple of comments from, I think, Officer about pursuing some of the ag theft, but yet when the situations have been coming up, there just doesn't seem like there's anybody pursuing the matter. I mean, it's in some recent deaths that we've had in the area. They just don't seem to want to do anything, at least the police officers on site. And it's frustrating because, you know, the governor's talked for years about trying to, you know, have agriculture providing more food for the islands, but yet we don't see anything changing in ag theft. And I know there's an ag forum for transferring of products that's been around since 2004, but has it ever been enforced? Because we do see a lot of fruits from some of the third-party vendors, and we know where it comes from. You just can't prove it, but we know just by the large amounts of it. So we just feel frustrated that we don't feel that there's anything being done. And if you look at the statistics in crimes, the ones that USDA's put out, Big Island's had the most egg theft crimes of any of the islands around, and they just keep increasing over the years.
Thank you, Jack. So I don't know which one of the community policing officers kind of want to take the lead on that. If you can just kind of speak to some of the challenges in pursuing ag theft and what you see as our opportunities going forward to pursue some of these cases.
Well, I can say that, yes, I mean, it is difficult to try and I guess we do make cases, but as far as prosecuting a certain individual, it's almost, once we catch them in the act, we're trying to look at a different angle as far as going towards the farmer's market, and which we recently did the other day, and trying to see if these fruits or stolen produce that are coming in, that we can try and cut the buyers off so that they're not trying to sell their stolen product to them. A lot of them didn't have that form or that receipt that is to be provided upon purchase, but we weren't making cases at that time. I guess the idea is with us in the prosecuting office is that we're gonna warn them at least 2 or 3 times, which is what we were instructed to do. And if they cannot produce that at that time, we can generate cases against them. And I'm not saying that this is gonna, you know, dramatically affect how the thefts are happening, but we have done sting operations at certain farms. We're very proactive out in the farms. We only work, unfortunately, during the daytime, so we're not able to do as much nighttime operations that we want, which is most of the time when it's happening. But we are, you know, making, you know, some success as far as reaching out to the community and trying to, I guess, better protect you guys from these thieves.
Thank you, officer. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I know it's frustrating. You know, I've spoken with many farmers out in Hamakua. We used to be farmers as well. We know how it goes. And, you know, we have, you know, confidential informants that are giving us information that we're trying to build off of. It's a time-consuming process, but just know that we are doing something about it.
Thank you. Maybe somebody from the prosecutor's office can speak a little bit about, you know, what the challenges are on your end. I know that in the past we had funding for somebody specifically dedicated to ag theft investigations. Have we recovered that funding? What are your outlooks for the future to bring more attention to this particular issue?
We have not recovered the funding for the position. In fact, that funding was used before to fund Shane's position as an investigator, specifically for agriculture theft. Instead, what our office has done in prioritizing agriculture theft under our new administration is that we've spread the responsibilities of agriculture theft over all our investigators. We're trying to focus. Hamakua has been identified as a particular place of interest. We've also been reached out to from farmers on the west side, especially with coffee and that industry. As Darren mentioned earlier, you know, one of the difficulties in the past, and you know, when we file charges against someone, we have to be able to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And you know, there are limitations with some of the farms, as far as with video surveillance and things of that nature. We understand the frustrations that the farmers are dealing with. Some of them have been hit multiple times. We've met with many of them. Shane has gone to different farms and spoken to some of these victims. In our office, we have farmers who are, employed as staff members and employees who've encountered similar situations, so we can share in the frustration. What we've encouraged farmers to do is, help be proactive, video surveillance, fencing, taking those types of means into their own hands, clearing obstructions and things of that nature. But, I think the first thing what we have to do is we have to try to work together. One of the other things that was done by the community policing section and working with Lieutenant Durr is we have opened our lines of communication with the officers and hope to bridge gaps and address any issues together as a team. We've been able to identify certain areas as potentially higher areas, as well as different persons of interest. And we believe by working together as a team, we'll be able to address the issue together. You guys want to share anything? I think Shane would like to share something.
Yeah, because when I was doing this grant, I did find out that a lot of problems stem from not reporting when it happens, and then so the officers don't know that it's happening. Usually, if the officers know it's happening, then they'll start addressing problems. They'll patrol more areas in the rural areas and stuff like that. So when I was doing the grant, I was encouraging the farmers to report on a timely manner. Sometimes you have to wait because it is a property crime. And if there's a crime against a person that's happening at the same time, it's going to take a second seat. So, be patient with our officers, because they're running around all over the place, But it's really important to report the crime when it happens.
Okay. You mind if I give my 2 cents here?
Yeah, please.
So I'm reading the comments here, and I understand it's frustrating. It's frustrating for us. It's frustrating for our prosecutor's office. They have to be caught in the act. I see this comment here, and it's realistically that's what it is. I mean, it's hard. You guys have pictures of these people on video surveillance at your farm, at their farms, and we know who the person of interest are. We make contact with them. Me, my brother, other community officers, patrolmen. We know who the person of interest are. We traffic stop them. We go through the houses. We borderline are like on them, almost borderline harassing these guys. We never catch them with any fruits, any evidence. We know who these are the guys stealing, but by the time we get to them, all the fruits are already moved. We cannot. We have nothing to weigh. We have no evidence to say how much. If like you said, it's a property crime. If we don't have the property to weigh and give an amount for, there's nothing to charge them for. You understand? And we're doing our part. We've actually done overnight stings. We've actually stayed overnight from 8 to 10 hours over in farms in the pitch black dark, waiting for farms to get hit. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. So I mean, me, myself, other community policing officers, we're trying to work with the prosecuting office to try and help you guys out from getting hit. I mean, there's only so much we can do, and we're really trying, and we're trying to find out the best out, the best way to get these guys to, get charged. It's not easy, and if you guys have any suggestions for us, I mean, we're all ears here. We're trying to help each other, and I mean, I don't want you guys to think we're not doing our part. You understand? I mean, that's really the thing, and we're out there every day. We're out there every day trying to look for evidence, look for guys suspicious activity. We're out there. So I mean, whatever you guys think that we can do to help, you just let us know.
Thank you for that, Officer Abalos. It is important. I mean, we're all a community. We all need to work on this together. And similarly, my office is open to any suggestions on this that we can do from the legislative end. Before I pass it to Glenn real quickly to see what R&D is doing, if anything around ag theft. If you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, I'll call on you. To raise your hand, you go on the Zoom platform, you go to reactions, and then you can just hit raise hand. If you are on a phone, it is *9 to raise your hand. So let me go first to Glenn from R&D and see if you have any comments with regard to anything R&D is working on. And then I see Jack has his hand raised.
Thank you, Heather. So what we were doing was working with Shane when he was the ag theft investigator. And basically one of the issues was we're looking at the movement certificate, which is also called DL22, as a way to try to choke off the market for this illegal products that were being picked up, and also to try to provide some kind of paper trail to help the investigating officers. So we had talked to our IT department to see what we could do in terms of setting up an app that could be easily transferred between a seller and a vendor so that they would have the proper paperwork in place, and which would also automatically be submitted to a server where we could have a database of this information. And that way, perhaps investigators can then, if they see a trend, as they're looking over the data, perhaps that would help them to narrow focus in their investigation. Some of the challenges that we encountered with the State Attorney General's office is that, and we were trying to go through the Department of Ag's commodity branch, because they were the ones who were given the responsibility of this agricultural theft. But one of the things that was brought up was the issue of confidentiality, because there's going to be all this information about the farm location, farm products, how much is being sold, what it was valued at, that would be put into this app or this form. Now, that form is actually, that information is on the current paper DL22, but I guess the concern was, if the system was to be hacked, that people could have access to this information. So we're trying to work on that. The unfortunate part is the commodities manager retired. COVID came in and it almost shut down the state's efforts. So we are getting ready to get back into this. Now, we were looking for a developer to help with the app, to develop this app. We do have a high-tech agricultural technology conference coming up next year, in which we'll be, one of the issues is an agricultural theft app. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to get some good products or samples that we may be able to utilize, at the same time working on this issue of confidentiality. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. I'll have some follow-ups for that in just a moment, but I want to go to Jack, and then we have some questions in the chat that I want to share. So Jack, go ahead.
Okay, so apps seem like a great idea, because everybody, you think not everybody has a smartphone, so you're eliminating those people there. Sometimes when people say, well, just look us up on Facebook, not everybody's on Facebook. So it has to be a grassroots and on the ground type thing. California's had ag theft for years and years, and they have what they call an OAN, which is an owner number for them. And it's a specific number by the sheriff's department where they can actually give that to that farmer, and they put it on all their equipment, and it's tracked that way. And it's a shared database throughout the United States. It's one option for equipment, tractors, things like that, because we know we have that too. Recently, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, there was a farm that was hit. The owners scared away the thieves. They left their car full of fruit, full of ladders, everything like that. Police came and they said there was nothing they can do. They didn't tow the car away. They didn't do anything. They They didn't even go in the area to look for where they were at. There was 4 people and they took off running, and they were somewhere in the area because their car was still there. So that's discerning, because you have evidence, you have a vehicle which is traceable to an individual or two, and nothing's done. And that's really sad to see that if it was a house that was just robbed, I'm sure that would be evidence, all the materials in the car. But why is it different when it's ag? It just seems like it's a different set of rules for ag. We just don't get the support we need. And if we're trying to provide good food for our community, this is not a way to help us. We struggle with it. Ag is not an easy occupation to do. And when you lose thousands of dollars in a few hours and you have no recourse, it's very sad.
Could I speak on that instance?
We'll go to Officer Abalos and then to the prosecutor's office. Thanks.
Okay. So if that's the instance in where on a farm that's located on Keviki Homestead Road was hit, I'm somewhat aware of that situation, and unfortunately, coming from a patrol aspect, I cannot speak for every officer that responds to a call. Not everybody has the same type of investigative skills or as thorough as most officers should be. And also, from our perspective, as we can go into the vehicle to try and identify who was driving the vehicle, whether it be IDs, things that are left behind that could tie it to somebody, then that's something that we can work with. But if it's just full of junk and, like you said, ladders, tools, I'm sure someone does own that did take off on foot. But you gotta understand, if we don't have anything to go off of, we can tie this vehicle to, then there's not a lot that we can do. And also, we do not tow from, unless it's stolen, we don't tow from
Private.
Personal property, from private homes, private driveways and stuff like that, unless it's stolen. So I'm not saying that was the case there, but just to speak a little bit about that instance, I'm not trying to justify what the officers did. Like I said, every officer is different. Their investigative skills are different, and what they tend to do at a case is different. And yes, like Keldon said, patrol is always very busy. They're jumping around to different cases, but each officer does things differently. And unfortunately, if that victim wasn't happy with the what the work that was put up by the officer, then they can definitely do something about it.
Thank you, Officer. The prosecuting office, the response, and yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Heather. This is a response to, I think, Jack, that's very disappointing to hear. I know Darren addressed it a little bit. Is that the incident that Darren's talking about? Is that the same one that you're talking about?
Yeah, and
Okay.
and as far as evidence, I mean, it was full of proof. I mean, so
Okay. So what we can do is, Darren, you and I can talk offline later on. We can figure out which incident that was, and then maybe I can reach out and talk to South Hilo Patrol. I can talk to Captain Finke and and see if there's something that we can just prepare. Take this as a learning experience, and hopefully we can learn from what could have been done differently, or maybe investigate a little bit differently. And if there is something that we could do to salvage in the future, but we can talk offline and we can talk about that. I noticed there were some questions in the chat, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to try to address, because I know we're all limited for time. Marissa mentioned a little bit earlier about smart water, and that is actually something that Shane had worked on in the past, and he and I are in talks with that. We're going to be working with Chief Ferreira and trying to figure out what's the best way to try to roll that out in the future. It's something that we had mentioned. I think we had brought it up at County Council during inauguration, but with COVID and different things that occurred over the last 6 months, it's been difficult to roll out new technology and things like that. But we will be working with that in the future. Also, I think
Sheldon,
was
before you go on, could you
Sure.
or Shane briefly just talk about what smart water is for those of us that are new to the term?
no problem. I think I'll let Shane because he's more of the expert on in the area.
I'm not an expert, but I know I kind of know what it is. Smart water, it's a marking solution. So you can put it on items. You can't put it on fruit because it's not FDA approved or anything, but you can put it on tools. They used it in Tulare, California extensively for like the copper theft in the ag areas, water pumps, tractors. They mark a tiny little area, it dries invisible, and then with a proprietary UV light, law enforcement can check it and it lights up. So you swab it and you send it into their lab. 7 days later, it comes back and it tells you who that kit belongs to. And what we found out, talking to like over a dozen agencies in the mainland that use it, they said that all the areas like farms, houses, businesses that use smart water, CSI, and they mark the areas, it's marked by smart water, and you educate the criminals on what it is. They don't have any, they have like just total drops in crime. They can't attribute it totally to smart water, but they're pretty sure that's what's doing it, you know, because the criminals know what it is, so they don't want to touch it.
Great, thanks, Shane. And for those of you that are on the live stream, the URL for more information is smartwatercsi.com. Keldon, did you have additional comments? And I also wanted to ask you to follow up on the comment in there about what the penalties are for ag theft.
Before going to that, I wanted to address. Brittany asked the question about the difference between ag theft and like someone getting caught stealing a car, so like unauthorized control of propelled vehicle. They both are Class C felonies, so maximum penalty is 5 years in prison. The reality is most people, first-time offenders will more than likely be sentenced to a probation term, which is up to 4 years of probation, up to 1 year in jail. If someone's probation is revoked, they could face the possibility of the penalty of the maximum term, which is the 5-year prison term. But to talk a little bit about the difference between someone who's caught on video stealing a car versus someone who's caught on video committing ag theft or stealing products. One of the additional elements that we need to prove with agriculture theft involves the weight of the items. If you have someone stealing the items on video and they take it and they carry it over a fence and then they're gone and we don't recover anything, there's nothing for us to weigh. And that's what that's what Officer Darren Abalos and Officer Aaron are talking about. That that's some of the difficulties that we have to deal with, but that's the way the law is written. Another thing is showing the value of what the products were. So if you don't have anything recovered, it's difficult to show what the value of those items were that were taken. With a car, if someone has a 2015 Toyota Tacoma and it's taken from their garage, it's something we're able to get a value from the vehicle because it's something that there's like we can get Kelley Blue Book, we can get a car dealership to someone with background to provide the necessary estimate for the vehicle. But with produce and not actually having something, and the thing is, that would be relying on the fact that the video surveillance was very clear and we were able to say, okay, this individual removed 50 avocados approximately 5 inches in diameter, and we were able to say that the current weight, the price per pound, we'd have to have all that type of information. But the reality is you have someone carrying up items inside of a bag, and then they're usually going over a fence line or walking off of a property. So it's difficult to even say what was inside of the bag. We all know, we can assume that it was, whatever produce item it was, lychee, rambutan, avocados, whatever it may be. But those are a lot of assumptions. That's the difficult part for us as prosecutors, is we need to be able to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt in court. And that's a little bit of the uphill battle and some of the issues that the officers have to deal with on a daily basis. But I appreciate your question.
A quick follow-up on that, Keldon. So I take it that is defined in Hawaii revised statutes, that's the requirement for prosecution. And has the prosecutor's office at any point that of worked with the state to maybe amend those rules a little bit, given the challenges associated with getting those values?
You know, that's something I'd have to check with Mitch and Jay and Charlene on in the past. I'm not too sure if that's something that they had looked into. I can tell you that since taking office, you know, this past legislative session, we've been you know, active in trying to work on different statutes and working with legislators. You know, we worked with everyone from like Linda Ichiyama with human trafficking and addressing some of those issues, and working with Gregor as well, and Chris Todd. But you know, I agree, it's something that we should probably take a look at, and maybe this group might be a group that would like to take a look at what are some of the issues that we've encountered. Another part of the statute also talks about having the premises fenced off in a manner that's clearly identifiable for the suspect. So I mean, that's another issue that we've had to encounter.
Okay, thank you for that. And you know, that's something that I think my office will look into a little bit as well. Glenn, you've been patiently waiting. Can you go ahead? There you go.
Thank you. I just wanted to, you know, address Jack's concern that, you know, not everybody has a smartphone and can use an app. Well, yeah, I'm one of those, Jack. So I understand the situation. I use a flip phone. But you know, unfortunately, then, you know, you would have to use paper and have 2 copies available whenever there's a transaction that takes place. Now, you know, it was also mentioned that the weight of the product with a value is important. And so once you cross a certain threshold, whoever is buying this product needs to check that person's ID to confirm that this person says that who it is. And, you know, that's where we're thinking that with the app, you know, we could have that inserted. And I guess that might be where one of the concerns about confidentiality, you know, might come up. Also, if I thought at one point that the picture of the vehicle delivering the produce also had to be could be inserted in this app, so that, you know, if this familiar green truck has been seen in different locations with maybe even with the license plate, you know, that might be something to help with an investigation. And then, as Brittany mentioned, you know, it's not only crops but also livestock, and this also extends to other things such as landscape plants. You know, all those items need anything as agricultural transaction, except, if I understand correctly, fish, unless perhaps if it's tilapia. You know, they would also require a movement certificate. And with the way that the industry is going right now, landscaping industry, I mean, there's a lot of plants being bought and sold. And so it's basically, once this, if we're gonna move on this movement certificate, the entire, all the agricultural industries need to be educated and has to come on board to, you know, utilize this method. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. What I wanted to follow up with you on is whether or not you've talked to any of the R&D departments or any of the other departments at in any of the other counties and seen anything there that's maybe something we want to replicate. And that question can go out to all of the panelists. Are there other things that we've seen across the state that we might be able to adopt?
Well, we do know that Maui County had lobbied for some funding for an agricultural theft investigator also. Other than that, I've not been you know, in communication with my colleagues in the other counties regarding ag theft.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to thank Brittany for putting the link in the chat, which has some recommendations on how to prevent ag theft. But I wanted to give both of our community policing officers just an opportunity to talk about some of the things that you think are successful in terms of helping the community prevent ag theft.
Well, as far as prevention, we kind of mentioned the same things that Keanu was saying. I know sometimes it may be tedious to get into place, but it does make a difference, you know, having, like you said, fence lines, some type of video surveillance. One, because we were once farmers, having an animal on property because it's fenced does help. I mean, of course, nobody wants to be running through a field being chased by a dog trying to pick fruits at the same time. So once they know that there's a loose animal in the field, it's a good deterrent. Also, trying to change up the times that you go to your farm, because these individuals who steal, they're pretty much just lying in wait, and they're watching your every move, and they know exactly when you show up, what time you're leaving, who's the vehicles that frequent that property, and who is the individuals that run that property. And once you see that there's some kind of cycle, then they know exactly when to come to the farm and when to leave. And they're very well aware of when certain fruits are in season. So if you know your lychee is gonna be fruitful soon, be more proactive, be in the field longer, or just stop by late at night. Yeah, I know it's somewhat tedious, but if you want to protect your crop, you got to take the extra step, honestly, because a lot of these places are in remote areas that patrol guys can't always be at. It's at least a 10 to 15 minute commute from town all the way to a farm up in Kaibiki Homestead Road, and that's not even to mention the traffic to get out there. So there's a good amount of things that farmers or residents can do to try and prevent these thieves from coming into their property. Like you said, we've identified a lot of them, but pinning them to that certain crime, it's a long road, but to deter them from actually happening would be more beneficial for the farmers. And like I said, it takes time and money, but in the long run, it is going to be better for you, and actually make money during season because your fruits are still there.
I wanted just a quick follow-up on that. What do you recommend as far as protecting equipment in terms of making sure that if it is stolen, it can easily be identified as belonging to one of our farmers here?
You mean farming equipment is like tillers and tractors and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Having some kind of documentation that it's yours, VIN numbers, serial numbers that can link you to that specific type of equipment. Putting markings on it that only you would know where it's at and how it got there. And also, just being aware of exactly the condition of your equipment that it's in, because I know farming equipment does, it takes a beating, and it does end up getting run down, paint comes off, serial numbers come off and stuff like that. But, it's certain or specific markings or tags that you can put on there that only you will know about would be a big help to the officer who's investigating that, because without that, there's no way for us to say who's the wiser, because a lot of farmers buy the same type of equipment, and who's to say that the farm next to you owned that tractor and not the victim who's calling it in.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank
as
you.
far as securing, so awesome, sorry. As far as securing it, a lot of times farmers have them in warehouses. Go the extra step of, chaining up your equipment, or, parking or putting other equipment around that certain one that you're not trying to get stolen, because the harder you make it for these guys, the less likely they are to try and steal it. They're in there, they're trying to be in and out quick. So the harder they gotta work, the less likely they're gonna try and take it.
Great, thank you. There was a question on the Facebook Live feed, and either of our community policing officers or the prosecutor's office can maybe just speak to, in general terms, what is the prosecution for trespassing? What identifies a crime as a crime of trespass, and what should folks do if that's the avenue they want to pursue? What has to be in place?
Are you asking me or the prosecuting office?
I'm asking anybody who knows about this. So I mean, my very limited understanding is that you have to have the property fully fenced and you have to have the no trespassing signs. What else has to be in place for a trespassing crime to be pursued? Looks like the prosecutor's going to weigh in for us on that.
Okay, so having that the property fully enclosed, that's one of them. Like you said, the signs. I mean, it's just I mean, for trespassing, it's if not a mistake, it's a petty miss. So there's not really. I mean, they pretty much get contacted by us and time served. They don't really stay in jail or in custody that long for a petty misdemeanor.
Okay, thank you. Keldon and company, did you have anything to add to that?
So this is Jeff Malate.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so when you talk about trespass, it's like increases in penalties, like from simple trespass and like criminal trespass. So it slowly increases up to the point where you can even, how I see it is like eventually they can be charged with a burglary, depending on what kind of evidence we find. Because when you think of trespass, you're encroaching upon a piece of property. So first of all, so if you're encroaching onto a piece of property when you're not supposed to, then that's the simplest term, a simple trespass. So a criminal trespass, it depends on the circumstances. You can get a criminal trespass from a business. You're given a notice and you're told not to come. So we see a lot of those with the homeless people who frequent maybe Hilo, or if something happens at the Walmart and they can get somebody's arrested for shoplifting, theft in the fourth degree. A lot of times they're given a notice not to come back. And if they do come back, they're that's another form of trespass. For agricultural and to get a trespass for agricultural things, the law is specific in that sense. It has to be fenced in a manner to prevent people from encroaching onto the land. There needs to be signage indicating this is what that piece of property is.
Okay, thank you for elaborating on that, and thank you to the folks that put, I guess it's a Hawaii Revised Statute 708-814 that dictates that. So for those of you who want to look that up, are there any other? Oh, go ahead, Keldon.
Heather, if I could, I just wanted to add a little bit. I appreciate Darren sharing some insight on how the community members can help protect themselves against ag theft. Just to kind of piggyback off of some of the things that he shared. Another thing is, it might sound very simple or rudimentary, but just be observant. Know who your neighbors are. Know who's in your community. If you see something that's unusual, take note of it. Write down license plate numbers, descriptions of vehicles that you think are suspicious. Keep that type of information handy. Another thing you can do to be proactive, Darren mentioned about marking your equipment. Another thing, GPS trackers is something that are a lot more, they're a lot cheaper than they used to be a couple years back. I've known that there's been instances where people have been able to recover their stolen items by having those types of things placed on their property. With equipment, if you're able to install a hidden kill switch that disconnects like a starter or some other type of ignition device or fuel line cutoffs, that's another handy way to try to protect your equipment. If something's difficult for them to start or move, it makes things harder. So I understand that having to do all these extra things to protect your property seems very, it doesn't seem fair. In this day and age, that we should feel safe on our own property, within our own homes, farms, and within our community. But it's just the reality of the situation that we're in right now, and we have to try to stand up for ourselves and try to do all you can to protect yourself theft. So I mean, that's just a few of the things that we've realized that have made a difference. You know, there's not always a situation where a victim contacts the police and it's a situation where they actually lost out on equipment and things like that. There's also a situation where there's an attempt, where we know that in a device it's been, you know, an attempted theft or attempted removal of property from someone. And those are situations where these homeowners oftentimes take some of these types of proactive measures to try to protect themselves.
Thank you so much, Keldon. One of the questions that has come up here in the chat that maybe you can respond to, or one of our officers, what does a hedge or a natural barrier like a gulch count in terms of enclosing the property with regard to the trespassing regulations?
One second. Go ahead, Jeff.
So whatever barrier is in place, it has to be designed to exclude people from encroaching the land. So if it's just a bush that people can walk through it like at will, then that would not fall under the definition.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions out there from the community? I did see that we had somebody mention, one of our participants mentioned that they were able to use a hunting camera that sent photos to their phone to be able to be notified in real time that there was someone on their property. And we were able to catch somebody thanks to the Honoka'a police officers on their property. So that's not recommending any particular brand or anything here, but apparently that is available too. And that seems beneficial in the fact that it's real time. And so we can get officers there to the scene as it's happening.
Yes, you know, Heather, trail cameras has been, you'd be surprised, we do get a lot of cases. And I think, I'm sure the community police officers can attest to this, that we do get a lot of cases where trail camera footage has been used as the evidence in the case. And, you know, there's a lot of advantages with the trail cameras as far as power sources and things like that, because some of them, you know, are battery operated. I think there's even like solar ones too. So if you're in an area where you don't have access to electrical.
So in our opinion about trail cameras, I think they can be very effective. Most of the ones that we've seen only take still shots. None of them are actually in real time, but if they are available, then that would really greatly help the farmers, because now that information can be passed to, you know, patrol at that time and they can respond accordingly. Most of the time when community police division gets cases, it's after the fact, sometimes, you know, 2-3 days later that they want to make a case. And of course, you know, it does show, like Keldon said, people walking off property with bags full of most likely fruits, but we cannot say it's 100% guarantee that that's what's in there, even though we know that it is what it is. And also trail cameras, when they situate them in certain areas, these thieves are very well aware of that. So they gotta be really creative on where they situate them, because it does, most of them emit a very small red, I guess, dot or light that, of course, in pitch black, it's gonna stick out, especially if I'm walking through the gate of this property and I see that dot out of, you know, off distance for some reason. And one of the farmers that we've made numerous cases for in Kaiviki Homestead Road, a lot of his cameras have been taken down by these thieves because they know where they are, they see the light. No, now he's on money for these cameras. I'm not saying not to, but it is very helpful. But just be more mindful that when you set them up, to put them in an area that isn't so easily accessible by these people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for raising that. Any other questions from the community here? Well, we had Jack put in the chat about meeting quarterly to continue to discuss ideas and maybe get some help in terms of signage and stuff like that. I'm sure my office is more than willing to help convene those meetings. And I'm hopeful that the community policing officers and prosecuting attorney and R&D would be willing to do that. I see them all nodding, so I think that's a yes. Just as a final closing thoughts from each of community policing, prosecutor's office, and R&D, are there things that you see right now that the community could do to help on this issue, in addition to just making sure that everything is reported? I know that's Shane kind of touched on that at the beginning, that it's important as we move forward and try to get more funding for investigations or make any revisions to the Hawaii revised statutes. Having that database of information is important. Let's start with the community policing officers. Either one of you, do you have suggestions on how the community can help address this issue?
I think a lot of the questions that you guys had are good questions, and hopefully we provided enough information for you guys to take right now and try to apply them. One of the things Kelvin did mention is observations. That is, to us, a key thing in as far as crime prevention, because in a small community like you guys have in Honomu, I mean, we're from country too. We know how small communities can be and how tight knit you guys are. So who's your neighbors, who's not your neighbors, who just seems out of place, vehicles that you don't see frequently, and just so happen now you're seeing this vehicle, a couple times a week, certain faces, kind of just lingering in the area. Take note of that, and that's information that you guys can compile and provide to us, and hopefully we can do something about it. Because, like mentioned earlier, patrol cannot be out there 24/7. So sometimes we do rely heavily on the community to provide us this information so that we can, take this to the next step. So if you guys can, just be observant and, let us know what you guys see that you feel like suspicious or out of place, then that would greatly help us as well.
Great, thank you so much. The Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, Prosecutor Walton, and anybody else over there, do you have recommendations or ideas on how the community can help contribute to addressing this issue?
Heather, I just want to say thank you again for bringing light to the situation that we have and the importance of agricultural theft in our community. I really think that having an open line of communication, a forum such as this is a real positive step in the right direction, bringing the right people to the table and having us kind of working together as a team to try to address this issue. I just want to encourage everyone again, don't be discouraged. Please know that your information, the observations that you make about these types of crimes and theft in our community, it does make a difference. Please don't be discouraged. Please continue to report these situations and these incidents to the police. Know that they are working hard to try to combat the issue at hand, and we will work with them as a team. And just once again, thank you all for giving us the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Prosecutor, and the rest of your team for being here tonight. Glenn, do you have anything to add about how we can work together?
No, I just thinking about that. Unfortunately, that movement certificate, it's going to come down at some point. If there's going to be a very serious push to, reduce the amount of ag theft, they're going to want to have this paper trail and to help with the investigation.
Great, thank you. Question from Brittany in the chat. What number folks should call? I believe they should call the non-emergency number, which is 935-3111. Is that correct, guys?
3311.
3311, okay. 935-3311. Thank you for correcting me there. With that, we'll go ahead and close for this evening. I will say that my office will continue to converse with the prosecutor's office about potential for using this smart water and maybe looking at any necessary revisions we might request at the state level to the code that applies to agricultural theft. I'll also reach out to my colleagues on the other counties and see if I can get any information from them about things that they've found to be successful or anything that they're considering. My office is always open, virtually anyway. Feel free to give me a call. The office.
Heather, you're on mute.
I muted myself while I was grabbing my business card because I don't have my own phone number memorized. My office phone number is 961-8828. And feel free to email at heather.kimball@hawaiicounty.gov. Again, appreciate all of our guests for being here tonight, officers, plural, Avalos, and then of course, everybody from the prosecutor's office, and then Glenn from R&D. Thank you again for being here. Thank you, Jack, for convening us. And, hopefully the COVID numbers go down again in the near future, and we'll do another meeting next quarter. And hopefully that one can be in person, but we'll just have to see how things go. But I will work on convening that. So thank you again for your time, and appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much.
Heather, just give Alan a call. We can set something up.
Okay, will do. Thank you all so much, and have a great night. Stay safe.
Thank you too.